But is there a danger that every day, if we keep pounding away about mental health, anxiety, depression, so on and so on, that there is a slight danger of it tipping people into thinking there's something wrong with them when they're perfectly OK?
Well, you've got to get the balance right, and that's absolutely right. And in fact, there's increasing evidence that lots of non-medical interventions can help, especially at the lower end. And you and I might call that common sense, but there's increasing scientific evidence that GPs should be prescribing things like exercise and nutritional advice, and even going to a social club at the lighter end. But the thing about having good mental health is that there is a spectrum of mental illness, all the way from the sorts of anxieties that you were talking about then, all the way to very serious mental illness that clearly needs medicinal intervention. And we've got to get that balance right, and it's clear to us that there's more that needs to be done at the well, across the piece, really, whether it's ensuring that there are better norms for to help parents guide their children through the use of social media.
We, when we're on television, get a huge amount of negativity on social media, and sometimes that can affect me. And I'm 47 years old and I've been in this business for, decades. So how do we help teenagers deal with it when they're so much more vulnerable? What is your suggestion as Health Secretary for parents and what they can do about it?
Well, of course, there's rules that we can put in place, but a lot of it is about getting new norms, new social norms, ways of dealing with it. So, like I have to have a pretty thick skin and get a load of abuse on social media. But for children, we are introducing new advice and guidance from the Chief Medical Officer on what is a reasonable amount of, for instance, screen time and how social media should be used. And the purpose of that is that will help parents to say, look, as far as we can work out, as far as the evidence goes, these are the rules, and help them to police it. Because, the nature of the technology is this is a social issue. If one teenager is on social media and another isn't, or even worse, if a whole class is on except for a couple, then that brings in new social pressures. So it's better if we have norms that are set and guidance that's given. I
don't ever want to say things that sound just, inflammatory for the sake of it or unkind. It's not about that. It's about trying to bring a little bit of realism to it. And it's whether you could frame it in a different way, that mental strength might be a nice way of attacking this. That rather than it being health and problems and issues and people thinking doctors and medicine, but actually encouraging kids to develop mental strength when they're dealing with regular life stuff. And I'm not talking about serious things, the spectrum end that you were talking about earlier. Clearly, some people have genuine problems and have to be dealt with and treated, right? But a lot of people have this sort of anxiety. It seems to be the rising thing. And it seems to me there's a slight lack of training to be resilient. That actually, you see all these stories every day about kids, everyone has to win a prize at school when they're competing in case they lose, etc., etc. That actually, wouldn't it be better as a government to be saying to people, nothing wrong with winning, nothing wrong with losing, but it's better to win, and we're going to teach you as a government, as a country, to be mentally strong?
Yeah, I think there's an awful lot in that, an awful lot. Getting the language right here is important. And, one of the problems in the past we've had that we're trying to address is that addressing your mental health has not been seen as on a par with addressing your physical health. And sometimes we are squeamish about the words in this area. When I say mental health, I mean people having that sort of mental strength that you've talked about. And then when something's wrong with your mental health, we should call it mental illness. That is what it is. And trying to bring this parity, both in how we're open and can talk about our mental health, in the way that you can, fairly easily with your physical health, and nobody feels a barrier to that. And also, of course, in terms of the resources and the amount of support that people with very serious mental illnesses get. Getting that parity is an important part of what we're trying to do today by having a global summit on the issue, because actually every country around the world is struggling with these problems.
But we have a particular problem, don't we, with treatment and counselling 25% of children, 25%, 1 in 4, with a diagnosable mental health condition receives treatment or counselling. Imagine if that, you know, you talk about parity between mental health and physical health. Imagine if that was 1 in 4 children with cancer got treatment, or, you know, any other kind of physical health condition. That would be an absolute scandal. That's 3/4 of children do not get treatment or counselling when they have been diagnosed with a mental illness.
Well, that's right. That is exactly why we want to bring that parity. And getting to parity in terms of treatment is a journey. Actually, the UK is one of the leading countries around the world, believe it or not, in terms of the access that you get to treatment. And it's improved in the last few years. In fact, we only brought the figures in a few years ago because we wanted to see what was actually going on. And a big part of the £20 billion increase that we're putting into the NHS will go towards trying to address this disparity. So we're increasing the budget of the NHS by £20 billion a year, and we're working out right now how that's spent to get the best value out of the money.
Tommy Mallet from Towie has launched a campaign, #ICryBecause, because he wants men to release their emotions and not feel stigmatised by it. And I just wondered, for you, as Health Secretary, powerful man in your position, what makes you cry?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. I think my children, when something particularly emotional happens at home. Occasionally a really good film. But I think we should be pretty open about it.
Come on, what was the last film you cried at?
Oh gosh, I get pretty. What's the one about Christmas? It's a Beautiful Life. We watch
Wonderful Life.
We watch it. We watch it at Christmas. It's a Christmas staple in the Hancock household, and it always gets me weeping.
Do you know the one that got me going? And it got me going when I watched it again recently. And I haven't cried at a movie, I don't know, for God knows how long. I watched it on a plane, and I watched it again on a bigger screen when I got home.
What do you think's on a plane makes you more likely to cry?
Well, you've had a few drinks, obviously, which doesn't help. But it was that film Lion about the little Indian boy who got separated from his parents. Have you seen that film?
No.
It's ridiculously emotional at the end.
So
even I've cried at movies. Nothing wrong with a good old weep at a movie.
The last time I really blubbed was actually when I was writing and giving a speech, because as Health Secretary, I've drawn on the fact that my sister had a very serious accident last year, and her life was saved by the NHS. And there I was on a train, actually writing a speech describing it and saying thank you to the people at Southmead Hospital in Bristol who saved her. And I went with her. It was incredibly charged, emotionally charged. I went back with her to say thank you to the staff, and I was in absolute flood. So we should be very open, I think, about the highs and lows of life.
Absolutely right. Real men do cry, and it's also very good for you to do so.
Yeah.
It's a therapeutic effect.
In small doses. You don't want to be blubbing all the time, do you?
No, I'm not suggesting we blub all the time.
Maybe you could do with a bit more softening up something.
I think you're right.
Well, one last question.
I like the fact that you have to watch a sad film to make you cry. But you do enjoy a good cry.
Actually, it wasn't even sad. It was a very inspiring film. It's actually not a sad film like
it's sad at the beginning,
beautifully shot. Dev
You
Patel,
must cry looking back
Kidman.
on some of your performances.
Yeah, seriously. He makes me cry, of course.
Talking of things that make us cry, are you a fan of Theresa May's dancing?
I think it's terrific. Absolutely fantastic.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
Joy.
I genuinely do. Do you know why? I'll tell you why. Because it's completely authentic. It's absolutely her.
Do you? Last question. People think
You keep saying that.
No, I know. I keep thinking of better ones. You know, many people are looking below Theresa May in case the unfortunate happens and she should be shuffled off in Brexit mayhem, and maybe looking to who may lead the party. Your name has started cropping up in the kind of runners and riders. So we now have to go through that, you know, that familiar process where I say to you, would you ever like to be Prime Minister?
And you say there's already a competent leader.
And you lied to me. So would you ever like to be Prime Minister?
No. And I'm 40 years old. I've just been made the Health Secretary. I've got a big enough job on.
Oh, it's that
When you're made Health Secretary at 40, you're deemed a rising star.
Well, I'm sure that won't last for very long.
But just for the record, you can categorically look down the barrel of his camera and say you have absolutely no desire to ever be Prime Minister.
That's right.
Oh, he didn't say it. He didn't say it.
I can literally see your nose growing.